The rain fell hard against the city that night, painting the sidewalks with a sheen of silver. Mark pressed his jacket tighter around his little girl as they hurried through the downpour, his shoes soaking through. She was asleep in his arms, her small hand curled against his chest like she trusted him with her entire world. And she did, because he was all she had. He'd promised his daughter Emily that no matter what, he would keep her safe. But some nights, when the rent notice hung red on the door and his body ached from double shifts, he wondered how long his strength could last. He was a single dad, a janitor by day, a delivery driver by night. Love kept him moving, not money. What he didn't know was that fate had been watching, waiting to pull him into a world he never believed he belonged to. A world where billion-dollar boardrooms and designer gowns existed. A world where his path would cross with hers. And she, Claire Donovan, was everything he was not. She was polished, powerful, and as cold as the skyscraper she owned. The youngest CEO in her company's history, Claire had clawed her way to the top after losing her parents too young. She was brilliant, fearless, untouchable. But she was also lonely. Her problem? A board of directors demanding stability. Investors whispering doubts. The press eager to paint her as an ice queen who would never know love, never understand family values. Her solution? A fiancé. Not real, just enough to silence the world, prove she wasn't alone. And he had to be the right man, rugged but kind, believable but ordinary, someone the media wouldn't suspect. That's how Mark's life collided with hers. It started with a twist of fate, Emily spilling juice on Claire's white silk blouse at a coffee shop. Mark, exhausted, mortified, begged forgiveness. Claire, irritated but strangely intrigued by the man who carried himself with dignity even in worn shoes, asked his name. By the time their conversation ended, she had an idea. A reckless one. "Mark," she said, her voice steady, "how would you feel about pretending to be my fiancé?" He blinked, sure he'd misheard. "Excuse me? I'll pay you well. You'd attend events with me, stand by my side. Nothing inappropriate. Just appearances. You'd help me, and in return, I'd make sure you and your daughter are taken care of." He wanted to laugh at the absurdity. But when she mentioned enough money to cover Emily's school, their rent for a year, and more, the laugh died in his throat. And so, against every instinct, Mark agreed. From the start, they were fire and ice. She critiqued his rough edges, his old suit, his habit of saying ma'am. He teased her for her obsession with control, the way she calculated every move. He was a man who lived moment by moment, she was a woman who planned decades ahead. But as weeks passed, the charade blurred. At a gala, he caught her staring when he bent down to tie Emily's shoelace before they walked in. Her eyes softened, like no one had ever shown her that kind of simple, protective love. At a press dinner, when the cameras swarmed and she froze under the weight of questions, he placed a steadying hand on hers. He whispered, "Just breathe. I've got you." And she did breathe, because for the first time, someone wasn't asking her to be perfect. Mark began to see through her armor. Behind the designer suits and perfect speeches was a woman who had never known the comfort of family dinners, bedtime stories, or a child's laughter in her home. Claire began to see through his struggles. She saw not weakness but strength, the kind that came from working 3 jobs and still finding the energy to smile at his daughter. The world, of course, believed the lie. The media loved their unlikely romance, painting headlines of fairy tales between a CEO and a single dad. Claire's stock value soared, the board was silenced, and for the first time in years, she felt safe in her role. But what neither of them expected was how dangerous pretending could be. Because Mark wasn't just playing the part anymore. He was falling, for the way her laugh slipped out when Emily braided her hair, for the way she let herself be vulnerable only when no one else was watching. And Claire? She found herself lingering too long when their hands brushed, wondering what it would feel like if the ring on her finger meant something real. Still, both fought it. He believed she was far too good for him, and she believed love was a weakness she couldn't afford. Until one night changed everything. Claire had insisted on attending a charity event in a rough part of town, determined to give back. Protesters gathered outside, and when tensions flared, chaos erupted. Mark shielded her instinctively, pulling her and Emily behind him as objects flew. He didn't think about the cameras, the investors, or the contract. All he thought about was keeping them safe. Later, in the quiet of her penthouse, Claire broke. The facade cracked, tears spilling as she whispered, "I don't know how to do this, Mark. I've built everything alone. I don't know how to let someone in." And Mark, exhausted and bruised but steady, cupped her face and said, "You don't have to do it alone anymore." For the first time, the kiss wasn't staged. But love stories are never simple. The next morning, tabloids erupted with the truth: Mark wasn't a wealthy businessman, but a janitor. A fraud, they called him. Opportunist. Gold digger. The board demanded Claire cut ties immediately. She stood at a crossroads. Her empire or him? The safe choice or the real one? Mark, ashamed, tried to leave. "You deserve better, Claire. Someone who belongs in your world. I'm just a man who fixes leaky faucets and prays his little girl never feels poor." But Claire stopped him at the door. "Mark, don't you see? That's exactly why I need you. Because in your world, love is real. Family is real. And that's what I've been missing all along." When she took his hand in front of the board, the press, the entire world watching, it wasn't for appearances anymore. It was the boldest decision of her life. "This man," she declared, her voice unshakable, "is not a fraud. He is the most honest person I have ever met. And if that costs me everything, then so be it." Silence fell. But slowly, the narrative shifted. People saw the CEO not as cold, but as human. Investors realized that authenticity, real love, real values, was worth more than polished lies. And for the first time in her career, Claire didn't just win. She lived. Months later, Mark walked Emily down the aisle of a small church, not as her protector this time, but as a groom waiting for his bride. Claire wore no crown of power that day, just a simple dress and a smile that was hers alone. The little girl who once clung to her father's chest now danced in circles with her new mom. And as Mark pulled Claire into his arms, whispering, "I love you," against her hair, she knew this wasn't a contract, wasn't a game. It was real. And sometimes, the richest love comes not from money, but from the selflessness of a single dad who never stopped believing in kindness, even when the world gave him every reason not to.